SHALOM, Zion. Many heathens considered Malcolm X to be the greatest threat to their supremacist society, and rightly so. They had every justifiable reason to be threatened and to be completely scared out of their minds. For them, it would mean the end of their society and white privilege. Had our people first of all would have followed the scriptures, we would be on top and not bowing down to our enemies and begging for a morsel of bread. If we had just listened to the Most High, we would be the head and not the tail. So what you're about to hear are short lecture clips from Malcolm X on what our people could have achieved had they only loved their own people instead of putting every heathen nation before their own people. Right before Brother X was killed, he was on the verge of something very powerful. He started to wake up and to realize that he was a Hebrew of the 12 sons of Jacob. And he immediately began his exploration of his true Israelite heritage. But you see, Zion, we all know what came next. And you want to know the sad part about this, Zion? The aftermath of our people, fast forward today, this current day, really not much has changed. Our people have a greater love for the enemy than they did back in the 50s. And it's a crime shame what we're seeing today with our people. It's like our people have not taken one step forward as far as economics. We are still at the complete bottom, even worse so than we were back in the 50s. But for the awakened brothers and sisters, it's going to be power, because the Most High is doing some things to his anointed. And those who are awakened are going to come together in unity.
If white immigrants can come to this country 50 years ago with nickels and dimes and no education, and come here and pool their little nickels and dimes and no education, and set up little stores, develop these stores into larger stores, develop this into an industry which creates job opportunities for whites. Since Lincoln was supposed to have freed the black man 100 years ago, and today the black man, according to the government economist, has spending power of $20 billion per year. We feel that with the black man spending $20 billion a year, not setting up any businesses, not creating any industry, not creating any job opportunities for his own kind, he's not in a moral position to point the finger today at the white man and tell the white man that he's discriminating against him for not giving him a job in factories that he himself set up. If the black man has $20 billion, and these so-called Negro leaders are such geniuses that they can integrate white restaurants and integrate white factories and force themselves into that which the white man has set up, they should use this same ingenuity to show the black people how to pool our wealth and set up something of our own. And then we won't have to force our way into his anymore. One more thing.
In order for you and me to devise some kind of method or strategy to offset some of the events or a repetition of the events that have taken place here in Los Angeles recently, we have to go to the root. We have to go to the cause. Dealing with the condition itself is not enough. And it is because of our effort toward getting straight to the root that people oftentimes think we're dealing in hate.
We are oppressed. We are exploited. We are downtrodden. We are denied not only civil rights, but even human rights. So the only way we're going to get some of this oppression and exploitation away from us or aside from us is come together against the common enemy. Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. You should ask yourself, who taught you to hate being what God gave you?
What is your attitude on the relations between the black and white races? What do you seek to accomplish?
You never can force black people upon white people, and you never solve a problem by forcing anyone upon someone else, contrary to their will. And for that reason, he teaches us that integration will never work as long as you have to force it. So he has taught us that God has taught him that the best way to solve the problem that black people are involved in this country is to let us separate from whites and solve our own problems. Do for ourselves that which whites do for themselves. Stop begging the white man and stand on our own feet and solve our own problem.
Is it fair to say, as a generality and as a succinct way to put it, that you believe in segregation of the races?
Segregation is that which is forced upon inferiors by superiors. Separation is done voluntarily by two equals. You never refer to the Oriental community in which Orientals live exclusively as a segregated community, because they live there voluntarily. Everything there is controlled by them. The economy, the politics, the civic organizations, but the Negro community is referred to as a segregated community because Negroes are forced to live in that community contrary to their will, and they don't control the businesses of their community. They don't control the politics of their community, nor their social life. We do believe in separation, standing on our own feet among our own kind and solving our own problems. And that's the only way you'll get a solution to the vital race problem in this country. I think that white people are so guilty, knowing what they've done to black people, that they feel if the deeds were reversed, they would hate the black man if he had done the same thing to them. So it's actually, it reflects a guilt complex on the part of whites when they ask us, do we hate them? And if you notice, Uncle Sam has formed a habit of going all over the world. He calls it the ugly American or the American image. He thinks that everybody hates him because it's a guilt complex. And if you think that if you are worried about Europeans hating you and they're your allies and your cousins, well, naturally it would follow for you to think that Negroes in this country would hate you, especially in light of what has been done to black people in this country by white people. Our people should unite among ourselves and try and solve our own problems instead of trying to force ourselves upon whites and blame them for our plight.
Could we press for a very simple answer to one question? Do you hate all white people?
I don't think it's a fair question. The white man doesn't even come into my attitude. Us to love our own kind and let the white man take care of himself. For a white man today, sir, after kidnapping millions of black people from Africa, stripping them of all human characteristics and relegating them to the role of chattel or cattle or animals, commodity, merchandise that could be bought and sold at will, and then 100 years since the Emancipation Proclamation, using every type of deceptive method to further us into slavery, called second-class citizenship, I think that it would take a whole lot of nerve for white people today to ask Negroes, do they hate them?
You're perhaps right. Certainly nobody with a sense of reason would say that all Negroes should love all white people.
The problem isn't personal, and it's not individual. Our problem is collective. And just as Negroes suffer collectively from the collective attitude of white people in this country, you can't approach it on an individual basis. And this is where whites make their mistakes today. You should ask the Negroes who are being bitten by dogs after professing love for white people. If you notice, they accuse Mr. Muhammad of teaching hate. Well, Martin Luther King teaches Negroes to love all white people, no matter what they do to you, and the same whites whom he teaches Negroes to love sick dogs on him, sick dogs on their children, dogs on their women, and dogs on their babies. So I think it's very hypocritical on the part of whites to accuse Mr. Muhammad of a hate teacher because he says separation, and then sick dogs on Martin Luther King, who is teaching integration. It means that no matter what the Negro does, he is not going to get along with whites. So I think that Mr. Muhammad's whole philosophy is more intelligent than Mr. King's.
Anytime black people in this country try and force themselves upon whites, if the strategy that they use to become equal with the white man involves forcing themselves upon the white man where they are not wanted, then you're going to have plenty of violence. Well, extremists, the condition that black people suffer in this country is extremely bad, and it takes an extreme remedy to correct an extreme condition. That's why the moderates can't do it. That's why the conservatives can't do it. We are extremely angry over the plight of our people. And we know that it's going to take some extreme action to correct this plight. When you just face the fact that what has been done by the white man to the black man, it's a miracle that black people don't hate him, and it's another miracle that the black man hasn't taken up arms and show that he is just as willing to fight his enemy in this country as he has been willing to fight the enemy of this country on the battlefields of Korea and Germany and in the South Pacific and other places.
You think the time will come when Negroes will take up arms?
The time will come when any people and all people on this earth will develop enough intelligence to know that they are within their rights to do whatever is necessary to protect themselves. We're born at a time, and we live in an era when no oppressed people will be satisfied to let the oppressor continue to oppress them without doing something about it. And as the oppressed awaken and become very eager to defend themselves, the oppressor himself is going to step up his activity. And step up activity on the part of both will produce an explosion that's just as certain as the rising of the sun on the eastern horizon in the morning.
This is part true. And you won't find very many people who are Afro-American who will admit it. But if it is true, why? It is true that there is a sluggishness, intellectual sluggishness, academic sluggishness in almost any Negro community. But this exists only because of the result that has come upon us through years and years of slavery and being held down in this society. And this is why I made reference to the book Crisis in Black and White. This particular man gives a very good scientific analysis as to why this lethargy exists in the Negro community. It is something that has been created by the system. The system is designed to make the Negro student lose his interest in education almost before he even gets started in school. And the parents, usually, who are also limited where education is concerned and who have run into so many barriers and obstacles despite the fact they had education, sometimes they ask themselves, what's the use? So as long as the system that we are in exists, and this system, the survival of this system, depends upon the continued exploitation of the black man in this country. The survival of it depends upon the continued degrading of the black man in this country and the necessity of using us as the whipping boy and the alibi and the excuse. As long as this system exists, then you will find that our people will have the same attitude toward education. And they have a justified, I should say, they have an attitude that can be explained. But at the same time, the burden rests upon the leaders of the Afro-American community to try and instill within the youth especially the desire to further their education, because without it, you're not going anywhere on this earth today.
As long as we sit around here trying to pray to the white man's God and go to the white man's church and into the white man's school, we'll be brainwashed by the white man's educational system, and we'll continue to look down upon ourselves, and we'll continue to be a beggar to him, because we'll continue to think that he's superior to us. Instead of the Negro leaders having the black man begging for a chance to dine in white restaurants, the Negro leader should be showing the black man how to do something to strengthen his own economy, to give himself an independent economy, or to provide job opportunities for himself. Not begging for a cup of coffee in a white man's restaurant.
Dr. King's goals are quite different from yours. He believes in integration, complete integration of society. Is that correct?
That's where Dr. King is mixed up. His goal should be the solution of the problem of the black man in America. Now, not integration. Integration is the method toward obtaining that goal. And what the Negro leader has done is gotten himself wrapped up in the method and has forgotten what the goal is. The goal is the dignity of the black man in America. He wants respect as a human being. He wants recognition as a human being. Now, if integration will get him that, all right. If segregation will get him that, all right. If separation will get him that, all right. But after he gets integration and he still doesn't have this dignity and this recognition as a human being, then his problem is still not solved.
Well, isn't this exactly what Dr. King is looking towards, and that is the day when the Negro will be treated with dignity? Wasn't this, after all, the result of the Montgomery bus boycott?
No, because I don't think you can, having an opportunity to ride either on the front or the back or in the middle of someone else's bus doesn't dignify you. When you have your own bus, then you have dignity. When you have your own school, you have dignity. When you have your own country, you have dignity. When you have something of your own, you have dignity. But whenever you are begging for a chance to participate in that which belongs to someone else, or use that which belongs to someone else on an equal basis with the owner, that's not dignity, that's ignorance.
Being friendly and being a friend, I think, are two different things. I think there are many whites who act friendly toward Negroes. A fox acts friendly toward the lamb. And usually the fox is the one who ends up with the lamb chop on his plate. The wolf doesn't act friendly, and therefore the wolf has more difficulty in getting the lamb chop in his plate.
I'd like to point out, though, that...
I say that because it is usually if you study the structure of the Negro community, economically, politically, civically, psychologically, and otherwise, it's controlled by the white liberal, who usually poses as the friend of the Negro, who actually differs from the white conservative in the same way that the fox differs from the wolf. Their appetite is the same. Their motives are the same. It's only their mannerisms and methods that differ.
I would agree that no doubt there have been a large number of whites who have posed as liberals and as friends of the Negro and who have time and again betrayed the Negro. On the other hand, I think one could point to a large number of whites who have struggled for civil rights, for equality, and have got little or nothing out of it, other than quite a few bruises.
Give me an example.
Well, the large number of white students who have gone into the South, for example, working for SNCC and other organizations.
Not working for SNCC or other organizations, but working for the white political machines who benefit by the voting efforts of Negroes.
Okay. I'll be more specific. I would cite Herbert Hill, for example, as a kind of person who has championed Negro job rights, for example, in New York City and elsewhere. He has fought the political machine.
First time I met Herbert Hill personally was when they were picketing to stop the working on the Harlem Hospital in Harlem. Negroes for 10 years had to fight the city to get an annex built on the Harlem Hospital. Because in Harlem we need a hospital more so than anything else. Our people are sick, plus we do a lot of cutting and shooting of each other, though we profess to be nonviolent. And Herbert Hill brought his forces out and stopped the working on that site. This is the first time I ever saw him. Then when work was brought to a halt on a hospital in Harlem, the same Negroes tried to stop the work at the Downstate Medical Center in Brooklyn, which is predominantly white. They were out there for 3 months during the summer. Couldn't stop anything. And I never saw Herbert Hill out there one time. Now, whenever it takes a stoppage of something that's going to affect the white man, you find the white liberal absent. But when it involves something that primarily will affect the best interests of black people and black people only, then that white liberal is present. Herbert Hill is the labor secretary for the NAACP. And if he was interested in black people, he would prepare a black man with the type of knowledge and understanding of the labor troubles involving black people that would enable a black man to sit in the same position as Secretary of Labor or Labor Secretary in the NAACP. I'm suspicious of whites who join Negroes and always have to be in the lead, who always have to be the head, who always have to be at the top in Negro organizations. Those whites who really have the interest of blacks at heart, let them give some advice to some Negroes and stand on the sideline. But don't join the organization and then get at the head of it and pose as a friend of Negroes.
Well, I would defend his sincerity and his commitment. And more than that, I would say that just because a person is a Negro or a black American does not mean that he's going to struggle for Negro rights or for jobs for Negroes or anything else. I think that today you could point to a large number of Negro leaders who have consistently betrayed Negroes in a whole host of areas.
They aren't really Negro leaders. These are puppets that have been put in front of the Negro community by white liberals. These are parrots that have been put in front of the Negro community by white liberals. You can't name me a Negro leader who has been betrayed Negroes, who has not been endorsed, sanctioned, subsidized, and supported by the white liberals.
Minister Malcolm, I'd like to, well, I could cite one example would be Congressman Dawson, for example, in Chicago. In Chicago, a large number of liberals located in the Hyde Park district have consistently fought Dawson and his betrayals of the Negro, and they've also fought some of the people who represent Dawson on the Chicago City Council.
The only Negro I know who is constantly fought, only Negro politician that I know who is constantly fought by white liberals is Adam Clayton Powell. And they call him a racist because he speaks so bluntly on the race issue. But I'm not, as I said, not too familiar with Dawson and his work.